Hello, innovators. I'm Todd Wyant, and welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast presented by Applied Software Greatech Group. You're invited to join our conversation to model the future of construction innovation and the digital transformation adventure of this great industry. My guest today is Avi Leibovich. He is one of the co-founders and chief of product at BuildDots, a company that solves one of the biggest challenges in construction management using AI-based approach. Avi comes from a background of data-heavy cybersecurity systems and leads the company's product development and relationships with the British construction industry. Welcome to the show, Avi.
Hey, Todd. Thanks for having me.
So I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. So I always like to start with kind of the background of how you got into the construction industry to begin with.
Oh, how much time do you have? Um, no, but if we make it quick, look, myself and my two co-founders were looking, at the time we knew we'd do something. And we knew we'd start a company, or we will try. And we were looking for something that would have real world impact, was the quote. And then a friend of a friend told us, you want real world impact? Come to construction. Now is the time. And we started looking into how the industry operates, and what challenges exist there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think very quickly realized that you look at the situation in which professionals on site are put, trying to manage this beast of a thing with little to no help in terms of knowing what's going on, except for walking out yourself and having a look. And we said, no, that has to change. That's what we're going to tackle. And that's how it all started.
Yeah. So what about that kind of gripped you over other industry kind of pain points, and was like, yeah, this needs to be fixed, and we have the idea on how to fix it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we immediately were, let's call it, we took ourselves away from problems that have to do with materials or robotics or anything that is not software, because we come from software backgrounds. That's what we know to do. Mm-hmm. That was step one. And then step two, what we did at first was both here in London and back in Israel, we just visited sites. We had this nice deal where we would tell a site manager or, a superintendent, an engineer, whoever, tell them, look, I'll walk around all day with you. And in exchange, I'll bring coffee in the morning and I'll carry anything you need to be carried. That's the deal.
There you go.
So we did that for a while. And as you do that, you look and you say, man, how can it be? You sit in on a weekly meeting, with subcontractors. And you're sitting there and you're thinking, they're telling him what they did or did not do. His people are saying something else. Doesn't seem like anyone has the real truth here. And they're just arguing over it. And you come from backgrounds such as where we came from, where you know exactly what's going on. When you manage a software development team, for instance, you know exactly what's going on. You know the status of every task. I thought to myself, this cannot be managed this way. Or we thought to ourselves. And it very quickly became obvious that that's a very big problem, because even when we looked at other things, we had this idea about helping optimize what the tower crane does. Basically, the task list for the tower crane. Mm-hmm. Then we said, but I can't optimize the tower crane's task list, because to say what is more important, I have to know the status of everything on site, because that determines what's more important. But I don't know what the status of everything on site is. So how can I do that? Yeah. And all kept boiling down to the same issue.
Interesting. Why do you think construction has kind of let this linger out there on not really leaning into the efficiency gains and how to streamline this process?
Yeah, well, I don't think construction has let it linger out there. When we the very first outside of Israel construction project we visited was here in London, mm-hmm. And we came with this really horrendous mock-ups of what will be a future software that I myself built, and I'm far from a designer. And as we're showing this guy, project director, we're showing him this sheet that was saying, here, it will produce this and it will show progress of every activity. He says, hold on, opens his drawer, and pulls out a printed sheet that has exactly the same information, and says, my guys work extremely hard to produce this, and we all know that eventually this is not accurate. if you can automate this, get to a point where they don't have to spend that time, and I get real truth, accuracy here,
Yeah.
then I'm sold. So I think the industry is doing and has been doing all it can, but the fact of life is that if you are, the GC, you have, I don't know, sometimes hundreds of workers on site every day installing all sorts of things, and there are tens of thousands of elements. And what I call accurate information means that you know the status of each of those tens of thousands of elements. There's no real way to handle that manually. There's just
Mhm.
it cannot be done.
Yeah, it's not scalable at all.
Yeah.
How do you think being an outsider to the industry when you first started coming into construction, how did that help really be that kind of objective problem solver for the industry and look at it with a different set of eyes?
Yeah, I think if you're in construction, then you've come to accept certain things that are just that's my situation. That's what I got to deal with.
Mhm.
For instance, you've come to accept that in my case that that you don't necessarily have accurate information on what's going on. It's just that's life. So if you were to ask a project manager, do you know the status of your project? Obviously, their answer will be yes, and rightly so, because they do compared to what the industry does, compared to what they
Mhm.
can know, they do. Coming from outside is the only real way, I think, to say, but come on, it can't be this way. You're used to it because that's the cards you've been dealt for years.
Yeah.
But it's I used to say that sending project managers, superintendents, whoever to do this way is like giving 10 guys a few sticks, a few stones, telling them, you see there, that's France. Go conquer it for me if you can. Good luck.
Nice. I like the illustration there. Yeah, it'd be futile. Yeah. So what does connected construction? What does that look like in kind of practical terms? How's that? How do you see that?
So when we started thinking about that, I think we approached it from two angles. One is the information side.
Mhm.
Is everything that happens on site connected to the same information?
Mhm.
Now, this is part of this company's vision. Not all of it is realized in our offering today. But for instance, when you're in charge of ordering materials to site, that should be done as a derivative of something that tells you exactly what's going on site, so that you don't order too much and then have to store it, and perhaps something will happen, and don't
Mhm.
order too less, and then obviously that's a problem. So there's that aspect. The other aspect is the people on site aspect. Is we've come to realize that when you sit in on such a subcontractor meeting and there's an argument between the superintendent and the foreman of the sub, it's not an argument. I mean, nobody is lying and nobody is trying to get away with anything. It's just the situation is that with lack of truth, people will each take the position that for sure protects them.
Right.
And it creates this situation of a lot of friction, of a lot of discussing things, of a lot of, uh, commercial threats sometimes, or whatever it is. And we came and said, can't be. There needs to be one source. Everyone knows what's going on. And once that happens, then you're like, okay, that's on me. I'm going to go and fix it. That's on you. You're going to go and fix that. Um, and I was surprised to see that, but subcontractors on our first projects that I used to visit myself every week would come to me and tell me, Aviv, we want to take you to other projects that we're involved in, because even for them, even though it was the GC's tool, and the GC had the information, it was like, now that's it. I don't need to, when I don't have enough work to do here, this guy can see it, and then he doesn't chase me to bring more men that I don't want to bring.
Mhm.
So come with me. Let's take you to another one of our sites.
Yeah.
And that connected piece of bringing everyone together to a common goal, I think, removing the I'll protect myself situation because the truth is out there. That's a powerful one for me.
Yeah. So, what do you think's the bigger hurdle, if I can put it that way, the connecting the information side, or on the people side and getting kind of everybody to play nicely in the sandbox together?
That's a difficult question. I think both, but I'll tell you why. Because with the information side, the problem is that there's no standardization.
Mm,
Um, by the way, something that we didn't know going in, but the fact is that each designer builds their models or designs whichever way they like. We've had a case where somebody modeled a closet in each apartment, and they modeled that closet and they put floor elements as shelves because it's the same. It's like a horizontal rectangular object. So cool. And that messed up our system completely because it relies on floors in a very real way. So
yeah.
it came up saying like there's 3,000 levels on this building, and so no standardization means that we do a lot of heavy lifting when we start projects to understand the project information, to understand the schedule, understand the design, and understand everything that is not in either of those, but is in people's minds. So that's a very big challenge. And we've built all sorts of workflows together with our customers to tackle that. But that's an initial thing. And then you get to a real challenge because this thing is extremely new. And in many ways, when you're introducing this to a new project team, like, wow, why, what is this? So my team has to sort of sell it every time, again and again, to work with the project team to show them why there is value in doing that. This is once this product is already sold, the company bought it, they put it on a project.
Yeah.
But you got to sell it to that project team. You got to explain to them that this is value for them. This is not value for their boss's boss.
Yeah.
So I guess connecting people to that experience in this whole new world, in a way, is a challenge. But we see that once you show someone the value, you sit in with them on one meeting and show them how that meeting can run with that in the background, then that's the way you got to show people the value once, and they're hooked.
Yeah. How do you start kind of tweaking the message point to them? You said a really interesting line that yes, the company's already bought it, but this has real value for you, Joe Smith, on this project team. How do you make it personal for them before actually having to roll it out and get their buy-in on the front side?
Yeah. So we have a customer success team. These are all people that we've hired from the industry. So they're construction professionals of all sorts, and they will work weekly with the project teams. And basically, what they will do is they will say, one guy here, he was a super in a project in New York, and then when he does it with our project, he says, "Look, I've been in your shoes. I know what it's like to run that weekly meeting with the subcontractors. I know what it's like when they, keep bombarding you with no, I couldn't do it because, he blocked me. He didn't do his work, so I couldn't progress. And then he says, no, that's not true, and whatever. Come, I'll sit with you once. We'll do it together. You don't need to do all the heavy lifting of learning how to use this tool just to test it. I'll be your build ops guy in one meeting."
Yeah.
And that's, I think, that's our way of showing the value, because you gotta help people experience it once, especially in this industry where a superintendent is under such an unbelievable workload. Can you really expect them to go out of their way and say, I'm gonna now stop, learn something that I don't even know if there's value to yet? I'm told that there is, but I haven't seen it.
Right.
So showing it once is always the key. Just show it.
Yeah. What I hear that is really good of what you guys are doing is you're really creating that partnership and making that link that it is not just kind of cramming down software. You're in it for the long haul. You want to make them successful, and it's a true partnership. I think that's great. That's a spot on way to do it in construction for sure.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, I think, eventually it's a win-win. We want our product to be used. We want it to affect the project's outcome. That's just not going to happen if the project team doesn't use it. It's a tool that is all about managing the construction process. And with all the respect to the owner and with all the respect to people back at headquarters and the GC, the people on the ground are the ones that, manage the process. So,
yeah, no, absolutely. I want to circle back to something that you said as well, talking about the information that's in people's minds and trying to get that out. I think the knowledge transfer part of that is huge and needed in this industry, especially with all the lack of labor and getting people fresh blood to come into construction. How do you go about getting kind of the knowledge that's in people's minds and transferring that into the software?
Yeah, good question. Well, first of all, I think we are privileged in the sense that we see a lot of projects. I mean, I have seen more construction projects than the average construction professional has ever seen, just because you know they're they're done everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I don't understand them even remotely close to that super's understanding, but the basics of it. And so we've started understanding that at the end of the day, the projects are not that different from one another. You look at a
Mhm.
residential project in the U.S., they're different, but not that different.
Yeah.
And we started building into the system and into our own processes sort of basic rules. If we give a silly one, then even if your schedule says building up walls, you should know that there are shaft walls and there are just internal walls that are not shaft walls, and they're different. And you gotta treat them differently. It doesn't matter if the schedule says it or not. You have to know as build-outs and as a build-outs person to ask that project team that question, which will say, "Oh yeah, sure, of course we do that."
Yeah.
So we've built this library of knowledge, which we keep asking the questions to the site teams. But even after you do that, things change, and we do this thing that as we start the project and the system starts tracking progress, we sit down once a week with the site team and ask them, "This is what this thing is saying. What's your report saying? Keep doing your manual reports, for now,
Mhm.
like the first few weeks." And then when you see a discrepancy, you try to understand together if that discrepancy is a result of somebody receiving a wrong report on site, therefore cool build-outs has the information, or because our understanding of their scope is just wrong. So we configured the system to track something, but that's not really what they're trying to do in that task.
Yeah.
So you do this process together with them, and I think the result becomes, going back to connected construction, you have somebody updating the schedule. This is especially common here in the UK. There's a person, that's their goal, called the planner.
Mm.
They update the schedule. And then you have the site guys. And the schedule doesn't speak the exact same language as the actual activities that the site guys are managing their subcontractors to do. So he asks them for an update. They give him an update in their language. He has his language, and now he has to scratch his head and say, "Okay, so how do I this?"
Yeah. You got to translate.
You got to translate. And same for financial purposes, in monthly valuations and payment requests and stuff like that. And this tool's ability to just track at the element level and then send that to different languages, the schedule language, the commercial language, the operational language, because in this, what we call implementation process at first, we set up the connection between all of them. It just makes it easier for everyone, because suddenly there's one data source, but 3 languages or 4 languages, depending.
Yeah. So they can speak in their language. The system translates that, puts it in the receiver's language that they want.
Yeah. The system will show the superintendent the progress against his sequence or her sequence. The system will push the data into, the schedule file in whichever format that schedule file is. So obviously it will show it in the schedule language, and it has a different screen that shows the commercial language. So it shows that sort of the same basic data, but against the line items that are in, a payment application.
Mm.
And that way, it's the same data, but it's talking those 3 languages, and each can use what they use.
Yeah, that's interesting. So let's kind of shift and let's talk to the skeptic that is out there that, maybe whatever reason they don't want to update their process. They're hesitant to embrace technology, whatever the case. What's the benefit for contextualizing the job site with and the design with technology? What do they get from it?
So I think it all comes down to, we call it control. But what does control mean? Control means that you actually know what's going on the project, and you know early. If you know early, you can react, and you can respond to things that happen. For instance, the simplest example: somebody forgets to install one back box for one socket, and then that wall is now going to be closed up. It's then going to be taped. It's then going to be painted. Sometimes someone will say, "Oh, wait, but I need a socket here," and now you got to start, opening that entire wall and feeding that socket and installing it. It's a mess. Versus this tool, so simple. It will just tell you, "Look, you're saying it's done, but it's 95% done. Here's the one thing that is missing," and then don't get to that headache. A super here in London, or the equivalent of a super, told me once. I asked him how much time that saved for him, just trying to manage the process. And he said, "How much time? You saved me a lot of hairs on my head and 5 years of stress. That's what of losing life due to stress.
Yeah.
That's what you saved me." So there's that aspect of just protecting you from stuff that happens.
Yeah.
And the other aspect is just managing that process, is knowing that if you're planning every week, but you're, we call it percent plan complete, like in lean construction, but you're hitting 40% with your subcontractor of what you're planning every week, then you won't finish on time, and you're not going to have good relationships with your other subs. And suddenly here comes this tool, and you manage every week, and you see exactly how much you achieved every week, and everyone can see it. And we have a customer in Finland, actually, that did their own research on this and showed that they went from 30, I think, percent of tasks that are actually completed in the week, of those that are planned for the week, to 75.
Wow. It's a big
Just
difference.
that is, and I'm not saying that they, more than halved their schedule, because if you don't finish a task within a week, it doesn't mean that it's going to take you 2 weeks. It could take you a week and a day. But just knowing that when you plan something for that week, it is going to happen at a good likelihood, just changes all the dynamics.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. What's a benefit of AI that people maybe aren't aware of for construction?
I think it's these, going back, you asked me about why do I think the industry didn't do something about this problem. I think it's because there are certain tasks in this world that are just not human tasks. And that's where AI shines. In this case of this tool, every time, and our customers capture the entire site twice a week. For some of our sites, and not even the biggest ones, we have one site that is 1 million square foot, one that is more than that, but even the smaller than that, 100,000 square foot project will have tens of thousands of elements that the system checks every week their status. This socket, this socket, that wall, this wall, that piece of duct, and that piece of duct, and all of that. AI is great in that, and I think that's the advantage. The advantage is just in automating these tasks that are just not for humans to do in many ways.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the perks and the promise of technology is that it frees the people up to be more creative, do more of the problem solving that the people are really good at, and let the computers and the technology take some of the mundane aspects
Completely.
off of your plate. Don't worry about that. Focus on what people are really good at.
Wow, 100%. The first super that ever used this tool, and I sat down with him and I asked him, "Look, what does the data do for you? What can it do more for you? Let's do it's like a brainstorm session." He looked at me and said, "You don't understand. The first thing that you did for me, and I don't think you'll ever top that, perhaps, is freeing me up from that. So making me 150% of what I was in terms of being able to problem solve, and handle things." So it's sort of that you give them a lot more information that they had, but without freeing up their time to handle that information, they just won't handle that information. Yeah. It's kind of a good deal. I'll give you more information, which means you can make more decisions, but I'll also give you more time so you can actually go ahead and make those decisions.
Right. I would take that deal. I like it. What's a trend for 2023 that you think is going to really come in and make a big splash for construction?
It's a good question. I think I think what's happening, if from my a modest perspective, if you look at the history of technology in this industry in the last few years, it all started from the basics. Document management, project management, uh, quality management, stuff like that, and that has suddenly there was a crazy influx of solutions. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the first construction tech conference that we ever went to was here in London called Digital Construction Week.
Yeah.
And you go by booth, and it's like a million solutions for design management and another million solutions for quality management, and it's just holy hell. And I think what this consolidation that is happening in the market is enabling is a lot more integration. And integration is something that I think any customer, as in any construction company, should want. Um, I always say, build us will not do it everything ever, and I don't think any other solution will do everything ever.
Mm-hmm.
But the project team or whoever, they need one thing that sort of speaks together and solves it. So for that, you need integrations. If you have a million solutions of each type, they're not all going to be integrated with all of them. Tech companies can't do that. Now with consolidation, suddenly it's a lot more realistic. For us 4 years ago, to integrate with every quality management tool out there would have been just insane. I couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Today, all of my customers use one of 3 tools, and I'm integrated with all 3 because it's easy. Because it's three. So that world of integration and systems speaking to each other and giving you one digital sort of experience as a whole is massive.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Well, what do you think's the next step then in industrializing the industry?
Good question. I think again, from my perspective, that you can't actually industrialize everything.
Mm.
I work with people who join this company on the sales side or the marketing side, and I explain to them, look, the fact that stuff happens on a construction project, suddenly the design has to change, or the design is just unbuildable, or a subcontractor goes bust, or whatever happens. That's not the industry's problem. That's the industry's challenge, because it's the nature of the industry. You can't get away from it. What are you going to do when we build us when we built our offices here in London, and they're actually brand new. We changed the design when they were already building. Why? Because someone said, "Oh no, I don't want this. I want that." What are you going to do? You're not going to stop people from doing that.
Right.
So
it's just a fact of life.
If you want to industrialize a process like this, it's never going to be a car manufacturing. Happy days. Every car is the same, and I know 5 years before I manufacture it, I know exactly what it's going to be down to the nut, to the bolt. But with systems like BuildUs, and there are others covering other aspects of construction, sort of controlling all the information around the status of what's happening, then suddenly maybe we can, even this very volatile environment, start industrializing, start understanding where we can do things, in a more repetitive, call it, way, because even though it's different every time, we're in control every time.
Yeah. More so kind of industrializing and standardizing the information and the data, not every single component of the job site.
Yeah. That is definitely another big one. We've actually started seeing customers that come to us and tell us, you know what, could you just help me build a sort of a guideline to how to model and how to build a schedule, so that we have a guideline that is a guideline that also works with you. And then we have some standardization in this process and how we use this system. And I think companies are starting to see, the advantages of that. Again, with new abilities coming in, because if we said before what a computer is good at, what a computer is very, very extremely bad at is applying judgment like a human does.
Right.
And saying, yeah, I know that this information is this, but actually, a superintendent walking into a site, into a room, can say, yeah, I know the design says the duct is meant to go that way, but actually it's coming in from here and it's all good. A computer can't apply that logic. So suddenly you need more standardization if you want to, benefit from more tech.
Yeah, I agree. The critical thinking component, that's where a human has to come in
Yeah,
and
yeah,
critically
exactly.
think. The computer can't. So what does innovation mean to you?
Well, I think it's solving a real problem. We a lot of people that are not really construction people ask me, "Oh, what are the future applications for this technology?" And I ask them, "What do you mean?" Say, "Oh, where else can it be used?" I go, "No, you misunderstand. I didn't build a technology. I looked at a problem that I'm trying to solve and started solving that. I am completely disinterested in what else it can do because I built it for a purpose."
Yeah,
So for me, innovation is when you look at a problem that's a real problem, a problem worth solving, and find the way to solve that. Whether that way is tech or that way is, building a new process or lean construction, last planner system, a lot of things that people do in construction that are just as innovative. They're just not, not lines of code.
yeah, yeah. I like it. So how do people find out more information and connect with you?
Well, first of all, buildots.com is an easy one. Um, Myself specifically is also quite easy. It's aviv at buildots.com, and I'll welcome. I do take, in the spirit of the industry, I take a bit of time to get to every email, but I do. Um, I think a lot of it is out there, especially on our website. But generally, there's you Google it and you see the case studies that we published, things like that. A lot of LinkedIn, it's all out there. It's a
Yeah,
digital world. We, as a tech company, we have to be there, don't we?
that's right. Yeah, well, it would be unusual if you wouldn't.
Yeah.
So final question for you. If I could give you all power and you could snap your fingers and innovate one thing in construction, what would you choose to innovate?
And autumn, this is a bit biased because it's what could help me have an easier life. But still, I'll say an
It counts.
automated, generated, and fully accurate design model. A tool that just you tell it, "Hello, Mr. Computer, I want a building. It needs to be a residential building. It needs to have 38 stories and whatever 400 apartments," and it just does it, and you
Yeah,
have it, and it's perfect.
nice. I like it. Take
If
all
you
the
can,
guesswork out of
if you
it.
can take care of that for me, I'll much appreciated.
Yeah, well, we'll get right on that. That's a very complex problem to
Yeah,
to
yeah.
tackle there. I like it. It's
Thank you. Thank
ambitious,
you.
but that's awesome. Well, Aviv, thanks so much for taking the time and coming on to the show and talking with us.
Once
This was
again, thanks for having me.